Hey there. Welcome to Living Words Press. I'm your author host, Zach Larson. Today we're going to talk about how to get to better writing, but you might have to face a nightmare to do it. Alright, I'll be honest, that title is a little bit clickbaity. It's maybe not a nightmare, but a lot of people do not like the thing that I'm going to suggest. So, I wanted you to get to this point. We have this girl writer here, and she's looking at the blank page, and there's darkness, and she's a little bit worried because of the thing that she's going to have to do to get to better writing. So in this, like I said, you probably don't want to hear what I'm going to say, but it is where I started writing, and it's informed all of my novel writing, my short stories, all the things that I do. Even my more academic writing, I still fall back on the skills that I learned in the area that I'm going to tell you. So before I drop that bad news, though, I'm going to assure you, not the person next to you, not the person you're thinking of, you, that you can learn to write better. This is a universal. Everyone can learn to write better. It's just a fact. And how do I know that? Well, number one, I've taught a lot of students how to do it. I have learned how to write better, but also everyone, every single person has to be taught how to write in the first place. Right? We don't learn it automatically. We have to be explicitly taught how to write and how to write well and what those words mean, and also reading. It's the same. Both of those things we have to be taught explicitly how to do. We don't learn automatically. So take speaking. You can put a baby in a room with a bunch of people speaking, and it will eventually just take in that speech, and it will learn how to speak without anyone really doing any direct instruction. Like, we don't do this, obviously. We speak to children, and we say mama, say dada, but if they were just in the room watching people interact and being spoken to without being taught how to speak, they just learn it. It's hardwired into our genetics, right? But reading and writing are not. You can put in a baby in a room full of books. Without help, it will never learn to read or write. Those will just be static symbols on a contrasting background, and that's all it will ever see. Okay? So, since we are all taught how to read and write in the first place, that means we can all learn to do it better. Because if you are taught it in the beginning, you can learn to do it better. Yeah, even you, Doubting Doubterson, I see you over there. Okay? I know you can do it better. I've taught people to do it better. I learned how to do it better. So I know that that's what that's what can happen. Okay, so we can all learn this. So what's that terrible thing you need to do? Well, let me tell you a little bit of story first. Let's harken back to the school year of 2001 to 2002. I, Zach, was 11 years old. I was in 6th grade. Yeah, I know I'm getting old, whatever. And at that point, I never really thought about becoming a writer, right? I wasn't using writing as a pastime. In fact, I think the year before, I did a whole report on becoming a real estate sales agent. Yeah, that never happened. And yeah, I'd written stories. Like, I think all writers that really love writing wrote stories as a kid. And I think we all just do that. Yeah, I'd written little stories in books, but I'd never written like a ton. I hear some writers that talk about writing just notebooks and notebooks of stories, even as a little kid. No, I wrote some. I didn't write a ton, okay? But then, and I was a reader. I read a lot. Okay? I read a lot of books, and I actually started out struggling as a reader, and I grew up with my grandparents. My grandma was told and realized like I wasn't learning how to read, and so they got me into extra programs, and she like forced me to sit by her every night and read a story, and from that I became an avid reader. I have always loved reading, but I wasn't a huge writer. Okay, so enter in this 6th grade class Mrs. Moser. She was a student teacher, and she had us studying a lot of stuff. And I don't remember her being bad. I, as a student teacher, was bad. I was not great. I was just like maybe barely passable. I think a lot of teachers in that first student teaching experience and first couple years teaching do struggle. So we need to give them a little bit of a break there and help them out. But I don't remember her being bad. I was a young kid, so maybe it was just different. But I liked her. I liked my regular teacher better, but I liked her too. And so she was teaching us things like the Holocaust, and we had these Jewish names that we took on of, I can't remember if they were chosen from a list, and we put the first name, last name together, and they were just like time period accurate Jewish, or if they were actually a person that was in a concentration camp. I can't remember, but it sounds better if we say somebody from the concentration camps. We took on that name, we learned about the Holocaust, and we kind of embodied that person in a way. And it made an impact on me. Like, I still remember the name that I got. It was Max Rosenblatt. I still remember that assigned name. And so it was very impactful to me. But the other thing that she taught impacted me more. That's poetry. So there it is. There's the big, scary thing that I think that you need to do to write better, and I don't think a lot of people are going to want to hear that, because it's not just writing poetry, it's also studying from well-written poetry and analyzing that. And you really need to do that if you want to up your writing skill. And ultimately, I think this is one of the best ways to do it, because of some things I'm going to talk about later. But yeah, so I hadn't been a huge writer up to that point. But after that, like, oh man, I wrote poems all the time. And I've lost a lot of them, but I still have some. But I wrote poems for the rest of my school years, all through high school. I would never really, sometimes I tried short stories, but I never really was getting into novels. I was like, novels are too long for me. I'm never going to have the patience to do that. And now I basically only write novels and very rarely poetry. But through the rest, I wrote those. I even got my poems in some anthologies for young writers. I got one in 7th grade, 8th grade, and one in 9th grade. And with those, yeah, we had to submit, and the teachers forced us all to write and submit for them, and we didn't all get picked. I think in my classes, like 2 or 3 of us got picked each time. But even so, even though it was like kind of competition-y, these were scams. These were money grabs by the owners, because they didn't really sell them online or anything like that. And I didn't get winnings from getting picked. It just got put in the anthology, my poems. And so it was a money grab. But even so, these gave me a taste of publication. And it made me want to be a writer. And at first I just wanted to be a poet. And then it moved from there on to finally novels later. But it did make poetry become my go-to writing escape for the next years of my life through the end of high school. And still today I use all of those poetic techniques. And I come back to poetry when I have something really emotional going on. Now poetry is more of I have this poem come to me. And then my regular writing is novels and short stories. But I still use the craft, and it's taught me a lot. A lot of the skills that I use today in my writing, not just creative writing, but also academic writing, come from poetry. And the way I taught my students often comes from that too. So let me give you a few reasons that you should be studying poetry to increase your writing craft. Okay, and once again, this is writing poetry and reading and studying published poets, so that you can see and ask, like, why are they making those word choices? How did they make me feel this way? So here are some of the things and the skills, the wordsmithing you can learn by studying good poetic craft. Number 1, figurative language. And this is a huge term because figurative language is a huge thing in poetry. There's lots of other terms like metaphor and simile that go with that. And so I'm not going to go into all of those, but figurative language, just the overarching idea, is very important to writing, because this is the skill of giving words meaning beyond the literal level. So good figurative language forces words to do more than one thing at a time. It makes them do double, triple, even quadruple duty. There's a lot going on there. It adds layers of meaning, and then the reader has to parse those things, has to figure those things out. And it really, if you've ever read a story and then you go and you didn't catch a bunch of stuff, and then or watched a show or heard a song, and then you get to the end, and then you go back and you say, oh wow, all of these things were there. I just didn't notice. And oh, look at all of these meanings that are here. Figurative language and the skills that you learn with that probably have a lot to do with it. Next is being concise. So many authors that I've heard speak about their writing talk about how long-winded they get on their first drafts, and then so many people always recommend cutting thousands of words on later edits. And it's because they're so long-winded, but I've never had that problem. I've never had, I've had to cut sections, and I've redone sections, but I've never gotten to the end of something and thought, wow, I need to cut 20,000 words from this. No, I'm always adding, because I actually write short, and I'm a lot more concise, and I think it comes from my poetry beginnings, because poetry forces you to run really tight. And so I do run really tight. I do cut sections at times, but never 10,000 words. And the readers that have read my stuff would say, yeah, there's no way that I needed to cut 10,000 words from the thing. So it's not just me saying this, it's people that see my writing. I run short and tight. Okay, that doesn't mean I'm perfect, but I don't have to cut thousands of words because I'm not wordy. I keep things down and concise and precise. Okay, and so being forced to write in a poetic form with poetic skills, not going all the way to the end of the line and having to write short, teaches you not only to be concise, but also how to choose words with care. Okay, diction, word choice being very important. Next is emotional register. Poems are really just jam-packed pieces of emotion and experience. And the purpose is to manipulate in a nice way the reader's experience. Poets work on their craft so that they can guide readers through intended experiences or emotional roller coasters. That's what we do as poets. So to do it properly, you need timing, pacing, precision, all of which are poetic forms, and all of which apply also to any other form of storytelling. How do you have a reader experience sadness at the right time, or how do you have them experience fear or dread at the right time? It comes from the word choice and emotional register that you can learn in poetry, because you have to choose words very carefully. And also, studying poets and how they've done it teaches you, just like studying and reading other writers of novels teaches you. But if you just really want to focus on word craft, poetry is where you need to go, because it's so condensed. It's just really a quick course if you're doing it right. And then here's the big one for me, meaning modification, because that's the way I think about writing, and it's often the way I taught my high school students to think about writing. Yeah, there's lots of terms and things to worry about, but I wasn't necessarily thinking or discussing with my students in a way that's oh, well, these grammar components are doing this, and we need to add all of these other grammar components. No, really I know the grammar components, and you have to look at what a real sentence is, but when I'm looking at writing, what I'm asking myself is, what is the meaning or intent? And how can I deepen that by shifting modifiers or creating new modifiers from other parts of the sentence? And really what I'm asking is how can I get rid of excessive words and move things around so that words that weren't modifying are creating a new modification or a change in the way that I'm looking at a different part of a sentence. So, for example, here's a simple sentence. The waves that hit the beach created foam. Okay, we are telling things pretty matter-of-factly. Hit the beach is maybe slightly descriptive, but it's a pretty simple sentence. So when I look at this, I'm asking, okay, how can I shift the words to modify it so that the experience is what I want it to be? So let's say I want the experience to be a little bit more intense and maybe even a little bit towards anger. Looking at something in slightly a negative or darker way, we can shift the words and create new modifications. So here's the change. The waves foamed as they crashed against the beach. So I took foamed and took it from a noun at the end and turned it into a verb that is active, foamed, so that's something it did something, and now it's directly modifying the waves. So the waves are creating this foam, yeah, but the waves foamed, almost like they foamed at the mouth. There's anger there, and crashed instead of hit. I changed hit to crashed. They crashed against the beach. And so I have shifted the entire feel of that line by changing one verb and taking a noun and making it be a different type of modifier. And that's the way I look at it. How can I modify the things going on in this to create the intent I want? So, that's what poetry taught me. Those things and more, but that's what we're starting out with. So those are the reasons I'm going to suggest that you go and study the craft of poetry, study poets, ask how they're doing things, look at people's analyses of poetry, and write a bunch of poetry yourself. Try forms. Don't just do free verse, but actually force yourself to write poetic forms and force yourself to fit within those forms, because those forms are going to force you to be more creative. There is something to be said for constrictions, fostering creativity. Right. So before you go, though, I want you to go and practice them right now. But before you do that, I'm going to show you the proof in the pudding. So here are the first couple paragraphs of my book, God Save the Children. So I want you to watch for the poetic influences in my style, and I think you'll see them pretty easily. So from God Save the Children, Maddie was falling. 5 heartbeats and a lurch in her bones told her she'd reached the peak. 2 breaths through her nose because the chin strap dug into her skin. But she needed the strap that tight, needed to stand on the edge and shout into the darkness that she wasn't afraid. It didn't matter if the darkness followed her out of her nightmares, because she was not afraid. Pain lived in her head, and shadows haunted her waking world, but none of that mattered when she planted her feet on a skateboard. On a board she'd faced death. Off the board, the pain ruled her. Right, hopefully you can see the pacing and the beats and the type of modifiers and descriptions I put in there to make it sound very poetic. And it flows really quickly. So I learned that from poetry. So now you need to go write some poems. And I'm going to remind you, number one, this is my Substack. So if you go over here and subscribe, you'll get to be emailed whenever I do a post. But also, if you want to be even more in the know, and have more of what I give out, Substack is not the best place to be. Actually, my newsletter through ConvertKit, is the best place to be. So if you go on over there, and you can just go to my website, www.livingwordspress.com, and just be on that website. You'll see the links to my newsletter. They're all right there. They're easy to find. You also find all of my stuff, my books listed. So if you want more, if you need help with writing, if you need some book recommendations, or if you need to have some information about faith or the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or novels, or just to see my books that are 100% clean books with good pacing. They're great books. You can go there to find them. So I'd appreciate your support. But yeah, head on over there, livingwordspress.com, and join that newsletter to get some stuff. Or you can go to my Substack at livingwordspress.substack.com. Join there as well if you like. Okay? So I will see you next time. Remember, never not read.